spend some time thinking about your story, and whether or not that comes from other thinking you've done in the past, whether or not it's articulated in your vision or your objectives or whatever. But think about how you can articulate that in a very concise way so that people get what it is you do and that it makes sense, not just to you but to an external audience as well, and it's snappy and you can reel it off and everyone says, yeah, that makes sense. Story is the first thing. So number one, story. Number two, who are you trying to talk to? Who is your audience? Is it your membership? Is it your broader community? If so, where are they? You know, all the sort of questions around their characteristics. And then third, how do we get to them? What's our best means of contacting our audience? Is that sending out Facebook posts? Is it having a meeting once a year with a cup of tea? Is it making sure that we post out a one-pager with pictures every 3 months? Whatever works for you is the way to go. I think it's a critical tool for everyone. I think if the 21st century will be marked as anything, it is the century of communication. I think finally people are recognising that storytelling, that communicating, engaging with the people that you're trying to connect with is absolutely critical, whether it's medical or legal or corporate or NFP, it doesn't really matter. You need to be able to tell your story in a compelling way, whether that's for financial reasons or just to connect with your audiences or for whatever. It is a key skill. You've got questions around, okay, where are your audience? Are they in one location? Are they spread across the city or the nation? Are they younger or older? What kind of communication approaches work best for the people you're trying to get to? I mean, in some instances that's a mail out. In other instances it's Facebook or Instagram. So, pick the channel that works for the people that you're trying to get to. And if you've got a broader range of people who are engaged with your organisation, then you need to think about how you use the same material that you might in a printed mail-out newsletter and then put it on social media as well and connect with all your audiences using the same content. So not doubling up on the effort, but making sure that you get to as many people as you can. Well, your membership and your intended audiences will listen to you if you're telling them a good story, which goes back to my first point, which is you've got to have a story to tell, because that's the be-all and end-all now. And I've been banging on about storytelling for a very long time, and I'm so relieved that finally in the last sort of 5 or 6 years that phrase has begun to gain acceptance. It sounded a bit twee, a decade ago when I was talking about it then. But there is no question about the fact that the best way humans retain information is to tell them a story. It's one that relates to their experience of the world or one that surprises them. I used to do an exercise when I was working in communications in organisations, asking people to tell me the last story that they sat in the car and listened to on the radio, or that came back to them a few days later, the one that stayed in their minds for days on end. And to a person, and I did this for tens and tens and tens of people at lots of different workshops, to a person they always remembered the story about the small child and their either glorious experience or tragic experience, or the story of personal triumph or tragedy. Those are the stories that people hang on to, not what the latest interest rate figures are, or the things that we tend to highlight as being critical news on a daily basis and that get front pages in the financial press or that lead bulletins. They're not the stories that people remember. So if you're trying to connect and to become memorable and to have people, bring you to mind, tell them stories that they can connect with. And they don't need to be particularly triumphant or tragic. They just need to be real and about issues that are of interest to that group of people. And I'm sounding terribly general, but everybody knows in their own NFP community why you came together, why you exist. Tell that story. If you choose to tell stories of clients or of members who have had difficult experiences, then you need to be really careful about how you represent those stories and whether or not identifying those individuals can cause them challenges down the track. So all that stuff needs to be considered, but it's still possible, whether or not you change the names and enough of the other material to make sure that they're not identified within their community, or you can create composite stories, which you then need to make clear are a composite, or are an amalgam of a range of experiences, but quite a real reflection of the life of the people that you are engaged with. There are ways around that, but always be honest. Don't try and sell a story as real if it is in fact a composite of 4 or 5 different sets of experience. That's not genuine, and can cause grief down the road. But if that is a realistic reflection of the experience of your membership or group, so be it. People are keen to hear that. Well, there are two ways of thinking about media, particularly moving away from communications, which is a much more direct experience of you and your organisation talking to your intended audience. Media creates a whole different dynamic, whether it's third-party social media intervention or it's regular mainstream radio, television, print. Because what that does is often require you to be responding. So it's more a defensive position as opposed to communication, which is a proactive engagement. So if you're very unlikely ever to be involved with media, then you probably don't need to spend a whole lot of time developing a plan. And in fact, I think plans should be very short. Even in major organisations, large plans are a complete waste of time, in my humble experience. I don't think there's much chance of trying to control your membership in terms of its engagement with social media, so I think you need to think through what other strategies you might have. Nor do you want to. I mean, the whole point of social media really is the free and flowing debate and discussion around certain issues. And I think often we tend to hear the negative stories around social media, but there is some huge upsides as well. And in terms of not-for-profits, it really is, and especially those with small budgets, it's a tremendous opportunity to speak direct to your community. So there are some significant advantages in engaging with social media.